Welcome to the Mystic Media channel. I am your host, Rabina Rastaban, aka the Realist Astrologer. And I've been wanting to do a reading on Chad Johnson and Michelle Williams since last month. Or maybe it was since the end of October. Because I've seen a few of their episodes of that reality show they have, Chad Loves Michelle. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, yo, first of all, who is this dude? So I had to look him up. And supposedly he's this minister, and chaplain of like some NFL teams. So he has this ministry called Elevate that happens to be based in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm based. So, but I never heard of this organization. Not saying that it's not legit. I looked it up, so it is legit. But even when I went to the website, it just seemed real cheesy, and even that had like an air of phoniness to it. So when I saw him in action on the reality show with Michelle, there was just something really off about this dude. And I was just looking at him like he was like kind of phony. So I was like, I gotta look at her chart, his chart, and put the two of their charts together and look at their synastry to see what type of energy is playing out. So already, I have to admit I'm kind of biased because I'm not feeling Jude. And I'm just like, it just seems like there's something up with him. So, let me just get into Michelle Williams' chart first, before I get into Chad's, and then I'm going to end it with their synastry. And I'm not going to be too long on this because, in my opinion, this situation is very straightforward as their synastry indicates, but not just their synastry, their individual charts. So, Michelle Williams, if some of my viewers aren't familiar with her, she was the member, or I'll say she was one of the members of Destiny's Child. Now, Destiny's Child had a rocky road with respect to their members. They had different members. So Beyonce and Kelly Rowland, they were the mainstays of Destiny's Child. But they went through like 4 different other singers. So Michelle Williams was the last one to be brought on board with Destiny's Child, and she made up the trio. So they first started off with 4 girls, and then they pared down to 3, and then they brought Michelle Williams on. So Michelle Williams, she really, didn't get much acclaim being in Destiny's Child. She was kind of like pushed to the background. And she, if my memory serves me correctly, she was kind of clowned in some ways, in terms of her voice. And some people clowned the way she looked. Like, she just didn't fit in well with Destiny's Child. Like, I feel like that way. And I always felt sorry for her when I would see her with the other two. So, what I see in her chart speaks volumes about that. Now, she was born July 23rd, 1980. That makes her a Leo. Now, the 23rd birth number can make someone highly favored. So, with her being chosen to be part of Destiny's Child, that goes along with that. Now, that also deals with her being part of a trio. So, if you break the 23 down, 2 represents women, 3, the number 3, so 3 women. So, also 23 can produce a world traveler, someone who is well cultured, even well read. Her life path number is 30. That breaks down to 3. That points to the religious significance in her life, her being very spiritual, her converting to gospel. So she started off singing R&B within the group Destiny's Child, but then she gravitated towards gospel. She became an accomplished gospel singer, and she's collaborated with certain gospel acts over the years. But also her 30 life path number also points to her getting married to Chad, or her potential marriage to Chad. She's currently engaged to him, who is a pastor, also a chaplain for some NFL teams. I forget which teams in particular. Also, the life path number of 30 can produce a life that is rather lonely at times, and also where she needs to spend quite a bit of time in solitude and meditation in order for her to have that balance. And she has been reported to have had some issues with her mental health, namely depression, which I'm going to get into. Now, the interesting thing about Michelle's chart is that her sun is the only planet in Leo in addition to her North Node, and her sun is unaspected, which is not very much of a good thing from my experience. So when the sun is unaspected, you can look at it as that planet doesn't have an anchor. So whatever planet is unaspected, in her case, it's the sun. It lacks an anchor. And with that, a lot is possible, and some of what is possible is not necessarily desirable for the individual. So if we're talking about the sun representing Michelle Williams' potential husband, that could deal with her husband or significant other being unhinged or wayward in some type of way. Also, where anything is basically possible in terms of a husband, like, it's like, she may not really be ready for what she's going to get, or she may get more than what she bargained for in a husband. And when it comes to unaspected planets, you can look at that planet as like a loose cannon. So whatever that planet is representing can act as a loose cannon. And in my opinion, it's better to have a square involving that planet than no aspect at all. And a square is a challenging aspect. Now, moving along, Michelle Williams' South Node is at the 21st degree of Aquarius. The 21st is a degree of religion because it breaks down to 3. Religion, spirituality. It also reinforces the theme of her being a world traveler. Also, it pertains to her being in a group. But being in a group in this lifetime, or being affiliated with a group like when she was in Destiny's Child, can be very unfulfilling. So, the South Node in Aquarius can make one naturally inclined towards phoniness. And like I always say, it is one half of the gay lunar nodal axis. So I always call the lunar nodal axis involving Leo and Aquarius being one that carries LGBTQ themes. Not saying that that is present in Michelle Williams' life, but just stay with me here because it very well could be. Now, her North Node's at the 21st degree of Leo. This deals with in this lifetime, she's meant to be a big time entertainer. So being part of Destiny's Child definitely fulfilled that. And that album that they put out where Michelle Williams was part of the trio was called Destiny Fulfilled, which is very interesting. Being as though Michelle Williams, her destiny was to be part of or to be a big entertainer and be a star. Also, it points to her being a gospel entertainer because of that 21st degree. That's religion, spirituality. And it also points to Chad being an NFL chaplain. NFL because of the Leo influence. So her North and South Node are in square to Uranus and Scorpio, and I'm seeing that as shady associations, alienation, being bullied. Also where, she could have had that whole Mean Girls around her type of thing, the Mean Girls theme. So I'm thinking that, when she was in Destiny's Child, she might have been treated like shit. She might have been bullied. She might have felt alienated. And they didn't even know her. So Kelly Rowland and Beyonce, they didn't really know Michelle Williams like that from my understanding when I read her bio. They basically selected her because she was referred by someone in the industry. So I wouldn't be surprised that she was mistreated when she was in Destiny's Child. And that was a running theme. That was a rumor about Destiny's Child that, Beyonce was the highly favored one. Beyonce was the prima donna in the group where the other ones got the shade and the other ones didn't get the shine. Naturally, it was Beyonce's group. Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father, was managing the group. So, that just comes naturally. Now, but I am seeing Uranus squaring her nodes as playing out like that. Her receiving hatred. Also, you could look at that as at some point in her life or at some points in her life, there is a need for her to cover up the truth. And this could be regarding sexuality. Now her Venus is at the 20th degree of Gemini. That 20th degree brings the themes of race into view. So that points to her being in an interracial relationship, especially with the Gemini influence, because Gemini, can be open-minded in that respect. Also, a relationship comes with a dual agenda. That's always a possibility with Venus and Gemini. This also points to the reality show because Gemini deals with the media. So you want to look at this in Michelle Williams' case in particular, like, could this be a media created relationship? Also, when I see her Venus in Gemini, I think about that shrill, raspy voice that she has. Now, her Venus runs contraparallel to the asteroid Estrella, and I'm looking at that as her straining her voice. So if you heard her sing, she does have a tendency to strain her voice. Sound like she be fucking up her vocal cords. Actually, she sounds like a bird that's been ran over by a car, really. She'll be all like, like that type of stuff. So, it's like she be going too far with the runs and stuff. So, I'm seeing that aspect, Venus contraparallel Estrella, as her straining her vocal cords. And I don't mean to clown her, but I think that she has been clowned for her singing like that, if my memory serves me correctly. Now, Venus, let's be real, she's not the best vocalist. Let's be real. Which could be a reason why she was chosen. Because when Destiny's Child had those other members, I think one was Latavia, and who was that other one? Farrah Franklin. I think Farrah Franklin could really sing really well. I'm not sure about Latavia. One of them had a solo career. I think it was Farrah. No, not Farrah. It was that Latoya Luckett. So there was Latoya Luckett, Latavia, and Farrah Franklin. But I forget which one had a really good voice that was rivaling Beyonce. Y'all let me know in the comment section. But yeah. So maybe that's why they chose Michelle, because they was like, okay, her voice is kind of raggedy, so she ain't going to be, any competition. She's not going to outshine Beyonce at the end of the day. And Kelly Rowland, she has a decent voice, but it's not, really on par with Beyonce's. So Michelle also has Venus conjoined to Bellatrix, which is very interesting because that can deal with a relationship that is a sham. Also, a relationship where there's some type of hidden agenda, where all is not what it seems. Because Bellatrix is a fixed star that can deal with where you are doing something behind the scenes, in a shadowy way, where you have a hidden agenda, ulterior motives. Also, you could look at that as, because Venus can represent one's partner, one's spouse, that perhaps her partner or spouse, Chad in this case, has ulterior motives, or that he's operating in a shadowy way. You can also look at this as perhaps she's playing the role of a beard, and there's other aspects there's aspects in their synastry that can support this theory. Now, her Venus is opposed to Neptune, and in terms of the music, this could deal with her being humiliated while she was in Destiny's Child, feeling isolated while in the group. Now, in terms of her relationship with Chad, this could deal with where her relationship is a lie, where she is marrying under false pretenses. That is if they even go through with the marriage. Now, her Venus is in quincunx to Uranus. Basically, her Venus is jacked up. It is terrible. FUBAR. You know that acronym fucked up beyond recognition, beyond all recognition. Her relationship profile is wrecked. It's terrible. She has Venus, quincunx, Uranus. This could deal with her, again, feeling alienated while in Destiny's Child, or actually being alienated, being bullied even. But in terms of relationship, this can produce an unconventional relationship, a relationship of convenience, where she has to, make constant adjustments because the relationship is not real. Venus is in square to Saturn. That can deal with a relationship that has an undercurrent of opportunism, also where there is an imbalance of responsibility, including financial responsibility, also issues with control, and a relationship that is filled with loneliness, and where a relationship can send her into depression. I would say that this is one of the depression aspects in her chart. So her relationship No, I'm sorry. Her depression, you could say, is relationship oriented, is circumstantial, as opposed to depression that's just, naturally ingrained within her. You could look at also where, comparing herself to others can send her into depression, or not being accepted can send her into depression. So being part of Destiny's Child, I would say, did more harm than good for her. Now, her Venus is in trine to Pluto, and that can deal with successful collaborations in music. Also, that reality show deal, because her Venus is in Gemini. And this can deal with, where she did get some money and prominence as a result of being a Destiny's Child. But at what cost? Now her Venus is conjoined to Hera, and that can point to her having, challenges with being part of that group in Destiny's Child. She could have been jealous of the other members, namely Beyonce. Or also where she could have faced hatred, vindictive, she could have face some form of vindictiveness at the hands of being a member, or at the hands of one of those members. But also in her relationships, there could be jealousy, vindictiveness. Her Uranus runs contra parallel to Psyche, and her Psyche is at the 0 degree of Gemini. And again, I'm seeing that as her being part of Destiny's Child could have really fucked her head up. Something terrible. Because Uranus deals with groups, and Psyche deals with psychological trauma. Psychological trauma, psychological wounds that never heal. It can also deal with like situations where you are like under mind control. Mars is at the 7th degree of Libra. That 7th degree can deal with the music industry, but it can also deal with deceptive tendencies. It can deal with lies. Also, where there's some type of sacrifice that needs to be made with respect to relationships. So this Mars at the 7th degree of Libra gave her the desire to be a singer. And it also deals with her attracting men who are spiritual, artistic, sensitive, but they can also be sexually fluid, if you catch my drift. And also men who have secret lives. Again, the theme of a hidden agenda resurfaces with that Mars at the 7th degree of Libra. Her Mars is in semi-square to Uranus, and this could deal with her being high-strung, where she'll flip out on you unexpectedly. This could deal with meltdowns and issues with her identity, where she could come across as phony at times, or she feels like she has to be phony. Also, this is further reinforcement of her feeling alienated while in Destiny's Child. Now, in terms of the men she attracts, this points to her attracting men who are on the down low. So she has the potential to attract men who are on the down low with this. Also, when you add into the fact that her Mars is in sesqui squared to her Aquarius South Node. So remember I talked about the theme with Aquarius South Node or North Node, Leo South Node or North Node, the gay lunar nodal axis. Well, she has the hookup with Mars sesqui squared South Node, where she can attract men who are on the down low, or in general, men who are not fully available to her, men who are emotionally detached in a large way or to a large degree. Her Mars is in semi-square to her Leo North Node. You can look at this as the pain that comes with fame. Also, where she has issues with comparing herself to others, and that makes it hard for her to maintain a high level of confidence. So being a Destiny's Child actually did force her to develop more personal strength and to distinguish herself from them. But again, it could have been a painful lesson that had to be learned in the process. Now her Mars runs contra-parallel to Eros. Her Eros is at the 7th degree of Virgo. This could point to issues with her own sexuality, but also where she attracts men who have secret sexual attractions, the secrecy being that 7th degree. Virgo could mean that, she attracts men who are attracted to individuals who are underage because of the Virgo influence. Also, this could deal with where, she attracts men, he might have somebody that's working for him that he's actually seeing, whether it's a nanny, a personal assistant, and it doesn't have to be a female. Now, her Neptune is opposed to Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is an asteroid where it's like you have to keep on doing the same thing over and over again, where it feels like punishment after a while, or where you are being punished in the form of having to do something over and over again. So with this, you could look at that as trying to keep up a lie. But this can also deal with her being on medication for a prolonged period of time because of the Neptune influence. Neptune rules medication. Now, I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to be back with Chad's chart and also the Synastry. Okay, I'm back. Now, let's get into Chad's chart. Say that 3 times. Chad's chart. Chad's chart. Chad's chart. Um, Now, when I looked for his birthday online, there was a discrepancy with his birthday, but then I quickly noticed that someone had put Chad Johnson, the football player, birthday for Chad Johnson, the minister. So I went to a few sources and then I saw that, okay, I settled upon July 7th, 1977. If anybody has a different birth date, let me know, because he's not really that big of a public figure yet. You know, that's if he is even going to be. So his birthday is still questionable, but I think this is his birthday because of his background and who he is. Now, he's a Cancer born on July 7th. The 7 points to spirituality. It explains why he's a pastor, but also an NFL chaplain, because his North Node, not his North Node, his Saturn is in Leo. So let me just back up. So the chaplain part points to the 7 birth number, but that 7 birth number can also point to him being very secretive, him maybe even having a secret life, him being prone to dishonesty and deceit. That's if he is inclined that way. So we need to look at other aspects in his chart to see if that is the case. Now, his life path number is an 11 that breaks down to 2. That 11 and 2 points to race. That's one of the themes of the number 2. So that points to him being in an interracial relationship. The 11 points to the conflict that comes with being in an interracial relationship. It can also bring conflict with women and conflict with his family. Also conflict in terms of where he lives. So he was, he says he's torn between moving the ministry from Phoenix to LA because now they're in LA. And he was like, well, this was in the most recent episode 4. And he was like, well, maybe I should just keep it in Phoenix and open up some centers in LA. So that 11 points to the conflict with where to live as well. Also, that a life path 11 in particular can point to where he is in a love triangle situation. Now, his Saturn is in Leo. It's in trine to Neptune and Sagittarius. That's the aspect that points to him being the NFL chaplain. So that's where the NFL comes in because of the Leo influence. Now, with this trine, it kind of seems like this was kind of just handed to him. Some people, and you can see this with trines in a chart, like you'll be able to see if certain things were just handed to people in life. And with this Saturn trine Neptune that he has, it looks like he might have just been handed this career. His sun is at the 15th degree of Cancer, and this points to him needing a woman to help him pull off his schemes. That's if he is the scheming type. So again, like I said, I am rather biased in this situation. So already I'm looking at him as being a scheming type of person. And with him being a 7, it's not too far-fetched. So with him being a Cancer, of course, family is very important. And also you can add in the theme of race. His sun is in quincunx to Neptune. So remember I talked about that 7 influence, and I said that 7 can cause him to be inclined towards dishonesty and deceit, but you need to look at the aspects in his chart to see if that would actually play out in that manner. So his quincunx aspect involving his sun and Neptune reinforces that 7 birth number, but not in a good way. This quincunx shows how he is channeling this 7 energy, and it makes him prone to dishonesty, deceit, basically living a lie, lying about who he really is, where he could be a fraud. He could basically be portraying a false image, a manufactured image even, where he could be crossing boundaries, where he could lack true devotion when it comes to love or loved ones, and where he has the tendency to be a moocher. Also, his sun is in square to his nodes. So his north node is in Libra, his south node is in Aries. With that Aries south node, know that he's coming from a position of being very self-absorbed, being all about self-determination, even if it's at the expense of others. Now, with the square to his nodes involving his sun, that could deal with him having problems with his image, and also where his family has a problem with his relationship choices because his sun is in Cancer. His sun is a square to Pluto. That is a very challenging aspect. And a lot of times with sun square Pluto individuals, there's a need to operate undercover for whatever reason. It can also make one inclined towards criminal tendencies. It can make one compulsive. In some cases, it can make the person a sexual deviant. Basically, I wouldn't trust this individual around children. That's all I'm saying. And he does work around children. That's all I'm going to say. Now, his moon is in Aries, but because I don't know what time he was born, I'm not sure what degree it's at. So it could be in quincunx to Uranus, but I'm not exactly sure. If it is, that could deal with him being with a woman where it's not totally, above board, or where there's something fake or phony about it, and where he just doesn't have a strong attraction to women, or where he doesn't really relate to women on I'll say a healthy level. Now his Venus is in Gemini, and his Venus is in Gemini just like Michelle's, which is interesting because Gemini rules the media, so that points to their relationship being broadcast in the media. And basically that reinforces what I was saying about perhaps their relationship being a media creation. Now, that Venus in Gemini can manifest as two partners, or where the person has a dual agenda. His Jupiter is in Gemini as well, and it's right on top of Michelle's Venus. So that points to their lives being like an open book due to the reality show media theme because of the Gemini influence. And also where this relationship is a way for the both of them to come up. And you can also look at this as the interracial theme because of the Jupiter influence. And you can also look at it as the spiritual connection, the fact that they are, a spiritual couple. He's a minister and she is a gospel singer. His Mars is at the 22nd degree of Taurus. That 22nd degree can be prone to homosexual tendencies or perversion, or where you just have unconventional desires, or where, you're just, odd or strange in some way. Also, that 22 is a challenging number because it puts you in situations where either it's about you controlling or you're the one being controlled. It's a number of where you're either having to assume a position of submission or where you are the one forcing other people to submit. So the fact that his Mars is at the 22nd degree of Taurus, number one, that makes him like very much about getting that money, getting that paper. But he could go about it in roundabout ways or unconventional ways. He could go about it getting money. Also, this can point to where his Mars being in Taurus, he has a need to maintain a certain type of appearance on a superficial level that may not be exactly who he is in reality. So that 22nd degree can also deal with some level of phoniness. So remember I talked about where he seemed kind of phony to me. Now let me look at his Mars again because I want to see what else his Mars is doing. His Mars isn't really his Mars is in semi-square, or it could be to his moon. But like I said, I don't know what time he was born, so I don't know what degree that moon is at for me to be confident with that semi-square. But let me look and see if his Mars is on any aspects. So his Mars is conjoined to the fixed star Capulus, and that represents male sexual and or aggressive energy. So Mars deals with sexual attraction, sexual desire, This could deal with where he does, he has a desire for males. And it could be he has a desire for alpha males, the type that would be athletes, which would explain why he gravitates towards the athletic industry. Football in particular, because football is very aggressive. It's very alpha. That's just very interesting. Let me just look at something else real quick. See what else his Mars is doing in terms of asteroids. I don't know why I didn't look at this before. His Mars is running parallel to Diana. And that could deal with where he's like a recruiter. 12 degrees Leo. Diana's at 12 degrees Leo. That could deal with where he's a recruiter. He recruits children for his camp, you can look at it as, but that could also have some sinister or ulterior motives. He also has his sun conjoined to the asteroid Hebe, and that deals with his involvement with children. But like I said, with Sun square Pluto, I wouldn't trust him around children. I'm just saying. Back to some other things in his chart that I noticed. So his Mercury is in Cancer and is squaring his north and south nodes. So in this most recent episode that I was watching, episode 4, Michelle said this statement. She said, she was talking about Chad. She was like, I do not want him to think that he's a visiting nurse, because Chad was complaining about how he feels like he's weighed down by the concerns of others, including Michelle's concerns, namely dealing with her mental health, which he keeps bringing up, by the way. Like, this is one of the main themes of the reality show, which I think is very exploitative, which is another thing that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So, again, to quote her again, she said, I do not want him to think that he's a visiting nurse. That deals with that Mercury and Cancer squaring the nodes. And this aspect is echoed in their synastry. This square through Michelle's Mercury, because both of their Mercuries are in Cancer. So Michelle's Mercury is squaring his North Node and South Node. So when she said, I do not want him to think that he's a visiting nurse, basically he is assuming that role kind of being like her caretaker, caregiver, nurse almost, where he's like monitoring her mental health state and, basically critiquing her and all that type of stuff. So this also plays out this square between Mercury and his nodes, where he may not be fully present in a relationship. Also, I'm looking at that where he can be the great pretender, so to speak, where he could pretend like he is invested in a relationship. He could pretend like he's in love with someone, but it's really, at the end of the day, to satisfy his selfish motive. Now, again, his South Node is in Aries, so you always got to take that into account, where he could always be coming from a selfish position. Also, these squares represent where he's still very much influenced by his family, because his Mercury is in Cancer. And it's interesting that they, I think this was in episode 2 or 3, where they brought his sister onto the show, and she was basically expressing her reservations about him getting married, because she was saying that they had a falling out or something like that, and she didn't want to lose him again, or whatever like that. But there's something up with the sister. I'm just saying, because there's Mercury squaring the nodes. She might end up spilling some tea on him. Now, also these squares can represent issues with marrying someone of a different race or culture. Also, it points to the comments he made about her mental health. Like in, I think it was episode 1, he was like, have you taken your meds today? He said that in response to her bringing up race, when he basically couldn't relate to some situation dealing with the black experience. You can also look at these squares as where he is being told what to say. He is following a script, and he's not being very convincing at it, because when I watch this reality show, I'd be like, okay, he doesn't even seem like he's coming across as authentic. Also, you can see the squares as where he's not able to freely speak his mind, again, because he's being told what to say. And again, the theme of a marriage being created by the media comes into play. So, I'll be right back with the part regarding their synastry. Okay, I'm back. Now, before I get into their synastry, I do need to mention that there was one episode, I forget which one it was, but they featured one of Chad's friends who was clearly gay, in my opinion. My gaydar is pretty strong. And I was like, oh, instead of, it looked like homie was more so of a homie lover friend, a boyfriend, not just, just somebody that, is a regular platonic friend. I'm just saying. So, he does have some, aspects in his chart that could show that he goes both ways. Now, because his Mars is conjoined to, what is it, Capulus? Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, that can make him very hypersexual. So, Michelle is basically saying, or they basically said they're going to agree to wait until they get married to have sex. So I'm like, okay, how are you blowing off some steam in the meantime, while you're supposed to be celibate because of your spiritual beliefs? So, I'm just like, I'm basically saying, wow, that's interesting. He also has Saturn conjoined to the fixed star Dove. And that right there could deal with arrogance and also where the person could be destructive. And his Saturn is at the 15th degree of Leo. So that Leo influence points to his involvement with the NFL, but also it could point to his involvement with children. Alright, so let's get into their synastry. So remember I said that Michelle's Mercury in Cancer is squaring Chad's nose. So she falls right in to play with respect to the challenges that are inherent in his life regarding Mercury and his nodes. So remember, just to reiterate, remember she said, I do not want him to think that he's a visiting nurse. Also, I said that these squares can manifest as where he's not being fully present in a relationship, where he's the great pretender, where he's still very much influenced by his family, where he has issues marrying someone of a different race and culture, where, not saying where he has reservations about it, but where it comes with challenges. And also the whole mental health portion. Now, Michelle's Pluto is squaring Chad's Sun, so that could deal with where her life can be like all consuming in terms of his life. Her life can basically change his in tremendous ways and not necessarily for the better. So he may end up getting more than what he bargained for dealing with Michelle, and Michelle has the power to expose him regarding some of his secrets, because remember, his sun is in quincunx to Neptune. So her Pluto squaring his sun can trigger that sun quincunx Neptune aspect in his chart where she's outing him. So it could play out in a situation like where, she basically is saying, oh yeah, I found out that he was a fake, he was a fraud, he just married me for my money, I found out that he was on the down low, blah, 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 blah. So that could be, the end result with all that. But definitely that is not a good aspect for a committed relationship or a marriage, especially. Let me just see something real quick. Okay. Now, her Jupiter is in semi-square to Chad's Mercury. So with that right there, that's basically where she has the ability, or she'll have the tendency to talk over him, and where she might, blurt things out about things that he would rather keep to himself or that he'd rather keep private. So he mentioned that, he even mentioned that, is, he gets tired of talking about race all the time, so that aspect can deal with that. But also, that could get kind of problematic after a while when he feels like he doesn't have much say in this situation. Let me see where her Jupiter is at again. Her Jupiter's in Virgo. Oh God. So that could deal with her being very critical of him, her, not being satisfied, never being satisfied, but also that points to the mental health issue as well, because her Jupiter is in Virgo. Jupiter in Virgo is not a nice, well, I'll say Virgo is not a nice sign for Jupiter. It can make the person be overly neurotic. It can make the person worry incessantly and be too nitpicky. Now, here's some other ones that are very telling. Their Mars are in challenging aspect with each other. His Mars is in Taurus, like I said before. It's making a sesame square to her Mars in Libra. So you can look at it as where his main drive is to make money, but her main drive is to be in some semblance of a relationship, to get married by all means necessary, you might as well say. His Mars in Taurus is opposing her Uranus in Scorpio, and that again can point to where he is in need of money, so he's going to team up with her, but where the union is not pure, where even if we're talking about a friendship, because Mars is opposing Uranus, his Mars is opposing her Uranus, that could be like a very one-sided friendship, even where it is based upon selfish motives, especially with him getting money, going after her money, or them even collaborating together in order to make money. Also, that's a separative aspect, so that opposition can lead to sudden separations, even to the point where they're engaged, but they don't go fully through with the marriage. So there could be something that happens where at the end of the day, and this could be written into the reality show script, where at the end of the day, they don't seal the deal. Now, Chad's Jupiter in Gemini is squaring Michelle's Saturn in Virgo, and that could deal with him putting her mental health issues, namely her depression, on blast, and where he has the ability to make her even more critical of herself, sending her into deeper depression. This is not a good aspect for her mental health. You could also view this square as Chad hamming it up for the media at Michelle's expense, especially at the expense of her mental health. Chad's Saturn in Leo is squaring Michelle's Uranus in Scorpio. This aspect, it's another one that's not even good for a healthy friendship. It could point to where their friendship is shady in some type of way, and where his rise to fame can cost her in terms of fans, and where the friendship has undercurrent of opportunism, and where the friendship may not even last long, the connection may not even last long, and if it does, it's because either one or the both of them are being fake. Chad's Neptune in Sagittarius is in sesame square to Michelle's Sun in Leo. This can deal with them putting up a charade. Basically, you can look at this aspect as Michelle's fake soon-to-be husband and his so-called ministry. You can also look at this aspect as him being a source of humiliation for her, him embarrassing her with his jokes about her mental health, and also where he could change up as soon as those cameras stop rolling. So basically, it's like the cameras stop rolling, cut, and he's all like, why isn't there ice in my libation? I'm just playing. But I'm thinking that, some sugar might really start coming out once the cameras stop rolling. I'm just saying with this dude. Now, his Neptune is in quincunx to her Mercury, and this is another aspect that could deal with where he's faking the funk. He's not being totally honest. He's, resorting to deception. And with Michelle's Mercury being in Cancer, this could deal with where, he's even isolating her from some of the people in her family or even people of her race because, like I said, Cancer is that race theme. So already they've gotten some flack from this reality show, and already it's created some type of scandal. So you could look at Chad's Neptune being in quincunx to Michelle's Mercury as him creating a scandal by being with her, especially within her own racial group, within the black community. And some black people were confused about his racial makeup. So this can point to the confusion too, and where, they have to clear things up. No, I'm not black, all that type of stuff. But it definitely seems like he is faking the funk and just being phony. Even the way he speaks, it seems put on. Now his Pluto is squaring Michelle's Mercury. That deals with where he could be negative influence upon her mind, upon her mental health, where he could be constantly breaking her down mentally. And this can point to where he is a manipulator and where he has underhanded motives and where he could expose her in terms of some things, in terms of her, in terms of information that she wants to keep private. This relationship is just a hot mess. Also, his Chiron is in semi-square to her Venus in Gemini. That could deal with a relationship that is phony or artificial in some way. His Chiron in Taurus is in quincunx to Michelle's Mars in Libra. And that right there could point to the motivation being money and where she's not getting any sex out of the relationship. Let's say that they do go ahead with the marriage. More than likely, they aren't going to have a good sex life because of this aspect. So this could point to where, she's blocked from having sex with him. And it could be because he's faking the funk about who he really is because he's not attracted to women. Also, her Pluto is conjoined to Chad's Libra North Node. And I believe he has this aspect in his natal. Let me just make sure. Yep. So this conjunction is playing out. The conjunction that he has in his natal, Pluto conjoined to his Libra North Node, is playing out in their synastry. And with that could deal with a relationship that serves a need to remain undercover. So, in the most layman's terms, or I'll say in the most common sense, you could look at that, especially because they are in the industry, where Michelle is playing the role as his beard, because Pluto deals with what is undercover. Also, you could look at that as where they're in an open relationship, open marriage, where he is able to do what he wants, despite being married to her. He's able to have sexual affairs outside of the marriage. Oftentimes, Pluto conjoined to the Libra North Node will produce situations like that, open relationships, open marriage, where there's a bunch of infidelity going on, but where it's accepted, where it's okay. Also, Chad's Chiron in Taurus is in sexy square to Michelle's Neptune in Sagittarius. That is a perfect aspect, meaning it is 0 degree or 0 minutes is like perfect. And that right there can point to there being some type of deception regarding this reality show, because it's about money at the end of the day, but also so that Chad can maintain some type of superficial image where he can appear to be somewhat normal or whatever. Now, Chad's Chiron is in Taurus and it's squaring Michelle's Leo sun. You could look at this aspect as him chipping away at her self-esteem and her self-worth. And also, this deals with the money thing where he is basically in it for money. This Chiron influence can deal with him being fake, phony, artificial, and superficial. And again, this is for the sake of getting money because his Chiron is in Taurus. So, the title of the reality show, Chad Loves Michelle. Well, with his Chiron squaring her sun, I would say that is a load of bullshit. He couldn't possibly love Michelle with this aspect right here. So, in my opinion, the conclusion, Chad does not love Michelle. This relationship is a sham. It is a creation of the media. It is for the purposes of making money for the both of them. But I also believe it's for the purpose of hiding something, for covering up who the both of them really are, especially Chad. So, let me know what you think in the comments section. I know this video reading might be controversial for some who can't think outside the box and who believe everything that the media tells them. But for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll definitely feel me on this one. Now, if you would like a reading, you could go to my website at rabina.com. Peace and many blessings.